The stars had always called to humanity. For thousands of years, people looked up at the night sky and wondered if they were alone. In the year 2247, they finally got their answer. The alien ship appeared near Jupiter on a cold morning in February. It was beautiful in a strange way. The vessel looked like a giant silver leaf floating through space, covered in lights that changed colors every few seconds. Scientists on Earth watched their screens with wide eyes. Politicians held emergency meetings. Religious leaders prayed. And somewhere deep underground, military commanders began reviewing plans they had prepared for over a century. The message came 3 days later. It was simple and translated into every human language at once, a technology that amazed Earth scientists. Greetings, young species. We are the Galactic Communion. We come in peace and friendship. We wish to meet your leaders. The world celebrated. People danced in the streets. Children painted pictures of aliens and humans holding hands. News channels played happy music and showed experts talking about a new age of wonder and discovery. Everyone was excited. Everyone except the people who knew the truth. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood in her office in Geneva, reading the message for the 100th time. She was a small woman with gray hair and kind eyes, but those eyes held secrets that would have shocked the celebrating crowds outside. Elena had spent 30 years in the diplomatic service. She had ended wars and saved millions of lives with nothing but words. Now she faced the greatest challenge of her career. "They found us," said General Marcus Webb, standing behind her. He was a tall man with dark skin and a serious face. His uniform was simple, with no medals or decorations. People who didn't know him thought he was just a regular soldier. They were very wrong. "They were always going to find us eventually," Elena replied. "The question is, what do they really want?" The answer came 2 weeks later when the alien delegation arrived in Geneva. The Communion had sent representatives from 3 species. The first were the Valorians, tall creatures with blue skin and 4 arms. They walked like they owned the universe and expected everyone to bow. The second were the Kethraks, reptilian beings with sharp teeth and cold eyes. They looked at humans the way a hungry cat looks at mice. The third were the Melodari, gentle beings made of living light who floated instead of walking. The meeting took place in a large conference room filled with cameras and reporters. The whole world was watching. Elena sat at the head of the human delegation, her face calm and pleasant. High Commander Vorath of the Valorians spoke first. His voice was deep and booming, and he clearly expected everyone to listen carefully. "Humans," he said, "you are fortunate. The Galactic Communion has watched your development for some time. You have achieved basic space travel, which qualifies you for contact. However, you are still young and weak. The galaxy is dangerous. There are species out there who would destroy you without a second thought." Elena nodded politely. "We appreciate your concern, High Commander." Vorath smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. "The Communion offers you protection. We have done this for many young species. You will be given protected species status. This means a stronger species will guard your territory and help you develop. In return, you will provide certain contributions to the Communion." "What kind of contributions?" Elena asked. The Kethraks representative, a scarred warrior named Draxus, leaned forward. "Resources, labor, genetic samples for our scientists. Nothing you cannot spare. It is a small price for survival." Elena looked at the alien delegation. She saw the arrogance in the Valorians' eyes. She saw the hunger in the Kethraks' faces. She saw how even the gentle Melodari stayed silent, as if they were afraid to speak. She had read the secret reports. She knew what protected species really meant. "This is a generous offer," Elena said with a warm smile. "We are honored that the Communion would extend such kindness to a primitive species like ourselves." General Webb, sitting beside her, kept his face perfectly blank. Only Elena knew how hard that was for him. Vorath looked pleased. "You are wise for such a young species. Most primitives argue and make foolish demands. Your acceptance shows intelligence." "We know our place in the universe," Elena replied. "We are small and weak. We have no military to speak of. Our ships are slow and poorly armed. How could we possibly refuse the protection of such powerful friends?" The aliens exchanged looks of satisfaction. This was going exactly as they expected. Humans were just like all the other young species they had encountered, scared, grateful, and easy to control. What they didn't know was that every word Elena spoke was a carefully crafted lie. Humanity had discovered alien signals 150 years ago, hidden in the cosmic background radiation. They had decoded the messages and learned terrible truths. The galaxy was not a place of friendship and cooperation. It was a place of empires and slaves, of strong species feeding on weak ones. The communion was not a union of equals. It was a system designed to keep powerful species in control and everyone else in chains. Earth's leaders had made a choice. They would prepare. They would hide. They would smile and bow and wait. Deep beneath the surface of the moon, in caverns that no alien scanner could penetrate, factories worked day and night. In the asteroid belt, hidden by clever technology, shipyards built vessels that would have amazed even the Valorians. On Mars, under domes that looked like simple research stations, scientists developed weapons that the galaxy had never seen. Humanity had found something on Europa, buried under miles of ice, ancient ruins from a species that had died millions of years ago. Their technology was advanced beyond anything in the communion, and humans had spent a century learning its secrets. But none of this showed on Elena's face as she shook hands with High Commander Vorath. "We will send a ship to your communion headquarters," she said, "to begin the process of integration. We have much to learn from our new friends." "Excellent," Vorath replied. "We will assign the Kethrax Dominion as your protectors. They are effective at managing young species." Elena saw Draxus smile at this, his sharp teeth gleaming. She knew what that smile meant. She had read the reports about what happened to species under Kethrax protection, the mining camps, the labor quotas, the slow extinction as populations were worked to death or bred for experiments. "We are grateful," she said, her voice steady. "The Kethrax seem like wonderful partners." After the meeting, Elena returned to her office. General Webb followed her and closed the door. "How long do we keep playing this game?" he asked. "As long as necessary," Elena replied. She walked to her window and looked up at the sky. Somewhere up there, alien ships were orbiting Earth, believing they had found another victim. "We need to learn everything about them. Their politics, their weaknesses, their technology. We need to know who can be trusted and who cannot. And if they push too hard? If they start hurting our people?" Elena turned to face him. Her kind eyes had turned cold and hard. "Then they will learn that some prey has teeth." 2 days later, the HSS Olive Branch launched from Earth orbit. It was a small ship, unarmed and slow, designed to look exactly as primitive as the aliens expected. Its crew of 50 diplomats and scientists smiled and waved as Valorian escort ships guided them toward the communion capital. None of the aliens noticed the tiny communication device hidden in Ambassador Vasquez's quarters. Every night, she sent encrypted reports back to Earth using technology the communion couldn't detect. She described everything she saw: the political structures, the military deployments, the secret tensions between species. And on Earth, in those hidden bases beneath the ground and among the asteroids, humanity continued its preparations. The Galactic Communion had made first contact with humans. They believed they had found another weak species to exploit. They laughed about the primitive creatures who had accepted their offer so quickly and gratefully. In a meeting room on the Valorian flagship, commanders discussed Earth's future. "These humans will be useful," said High Commander Vorath. "They are clever enough to follow orders, but too weak to cause trouble. The Kethrax will squeeze good value from them." "Useful servants at best," agreed Draxus, already planning which human cities would provide the best labor. None of them noticed that one of the cleaning robots in the corner had been recording everything. None of them knew that its transmission would reach Earth in less than an hour. And none of them suspected that humanity was not prey at all. It was a predator wearing the mask of a lamb, waiting patiently for the right moment to reveal its true face. 3 months had passed since first contact, and the Kethrax had wasted no time claiming their new territory. 40 warships entered Earth's solar system on a bright morning in May. They were ugly vessels, built for intimidation rather than beauty. Their hulls were covered in weapons, and their engines left trails of dirty radiation behind them. Commander Draxus stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Claw of Conquest, watching Earth grow larger on his screens. "Such a pretty planet," he said to his officers. "It will serve us well." The Kethrax had been protecting species for 3,000 years. They knew exactly how this worked. First came the polite requests. Then came the demands. Then came the punishments for those who refused. Eventually, the protected species either served willingly or stopped existing. Either way, the Kethrax got what they wanted. Draxus transmitted his first message to Earth's leaders. "People of Earth, we are your protectors now. We require a meeting to discuss the terms of our partnership." Ambassador Elena Vasquez met him on a space station orbiting the moon. She came with a small group of diplomats and scientists, all of them smiling and respectful. Draxus liked that. He had dealt with difficult species before, ones who fought and complained. The humans seemed much easier. "Commander Draxus," Elena said warmly, "we are honored by your presence. How can we serve the Kethrax Dominion?" Draxus showed his teeth in what might have been a smile. "We have several requirements. First, we need access to your mining operations. Your asteroid belt contains valuable minerals that we need." "Of course," Elena nodded. "We will share everything we have." "Second, we need workers. Our mining colonies across the sector require labor. You will provide 10,000 humans every year to work in these facilities." Elena's smile stayed in place, but her eyes flickered for just a moment. "We would need to discuss that with our population. Leaving home is a big step for many people." "They will volunteer," Draxus said. It was not a question. "Third, we need genetic samples from your population. Our scientists wish to study human biology for medical purposes." "May I ask what kind of medical purposes?" Draxus leaned forward, his cold reptilian eyes meeting hers. "You may not. Protected species do not ask questions. They obey." Elena lowered her head slightly. "I apologize, Commander. We are still learning our place." "Yes," Draxus replied. "You are." After the meeting, Elena returned to Earth. She went straight to the underground command center buried beneath the Swiss Alps, where General Webb and a dozen other military leaders waited. "They want slaves," Elena said flatly. 10,000 people a year to work in their mines. I've read the reports on those mines. The average life expectancy is 4 years. General Webb's hands tightened into fists. And the genetic samples? The Kethrax have a history of breeding programs. They take genetic material from conquered species and create modified versions for specific purposes. Soldiers, workers, pets. Elena's voice was cold with anger. They see us as animals to be used. "Then we end this now," said Admiral James Okonkwo, a quiet man who commanded humanity's hidden fleet. "We reveal ourselves and drive them out." "Not yet," Elena replied. "We still don't know enough. The Communion has hundreds of species and thousands of ships. If we act too soon, we might win against the Kethrax, but lose against the entire Communion." "So we let them take our people?" Elena shook her head. "We stall. We negotiate. We find excuses and delays. Every day we buy is another day to prepare." She looked around the room at the faces of humanity's secret defenders. "And we learn who else in the Communion might be willing to stand with us when the time comes." Over the next 3 months, Elena became a master of delay. When the Kethrax demanded workers, she explained that human biology required special preparation for space travel. When they demanded mining rights, she said that environmental concerns required careful study. When they demanded genetic samples, she provided carefully modified versions that revealed nothing useful. Draxus grew frustrated. These humans were polite and respectful, but somehow nothing ever got done. Every time he thought he had achieved something, another problem appeared. "Your species is testing my patience," he growled during one meeting. "We apologize deeply," Elena replied. "We are slow and primitive. These things take time for us." Meanwhile, humanity's spies worked across the Communion. They traveled as merchants and scientists, tourists and students. They made friends with species who whispered about the old days before the Communion, when smaller species were free. They found allies among the Melodari, who hated what the Communion had become, but were too afraid to resist. And they discovered something important. Elena stood before the Secret Council, holding a datapad filled with information. The communion is not as strong as it appears. The Valorians control everything through fear, but many species resent them. The Ketheraks are hated by almost everyone. And there are ancient laws in the Communion Charter that could protect us if we play this correctly. What kind of laws? General Webb asked. Any species that achieves certain technological milestones cannot be classified as protected. They must be offered full membership. The Valorians have hidden these laws because they don't want young species to know about them. What milestones? Elena smiled for the first time in months. Faster than light communication, advanced energy weapons, ships capable of interdimensional travel. She looked around the room. We already have all three. We just haven't shown anyone yet. Admiral Okonkwo leaned forward. So we reveal our technology and demand membership? Not yet. The Valorians would claim we stole the technology or that we don't understand it properly. They would find excuses. Elena set down the datapad. We need a moment, a crisis that forces them to see what we really are, something that makes denial impossible. A confrontation, General Webb said quietly. Yes, but it has to be their fault, not ours. We need to be the victims who fought back, not the aggressors who started a war. Draxus gave them that moment 2 weeks later. The Ketheraks commander had grown tired of waiting. He ordered his soldiers to begin direct collection of human resources. Landing craft descended on Mars, where 30,000 humans lived in dome cities across the red surface. The soldiers came with weapons and orders. They surrounded a residential dome called New Shanghai and announced that everyone inside would be relocated to Ketheraks mining colonies immediately. This is not a request, the squad leader announced. You will come with us now. Resistance will be punished. The humans inside the dome protested. They had families, jobs, lives. They couldn't simply leave everything behind. Some tried to call Earth for help. Others locked themselves in their homes. The Ketheraks broke down doors. They dragged people into the streets. They didn't care about protests or tears. Then it happened. A little girl named May, only 8 years old, tried to run back to her home to get her pet cat. A Ketherak soldier grabbed her arm and threw her aside. She hit her head on a metal support beam and collapsed. By the time her mother reached her, May was already gone. The soldier who killed her didn't even notice. He was too busy shouting orders at other humans. News of May's death reached Earth within an hour. It spread across the planet like fire. People who had celebrated first contact now screamed for justice. Politicians who had praised the communion now demanded action. In the underground command center, Elena watched the footage with tears running down her face. General Webb stood beside her, his body rigid with controlled rage. Is this enough? He asked. Elena nodded slowly. Yes, this is enough. She traveled to the communion capital one last time. She stood before the Galactic Council in a great hall filled with representatives from hundreds of species. Her voice was calm and clear as she spoke. The Ketheraks killed a human child on Mars. We have requested that they leave our territory within 7 standard days. If they do not leave, we will remove them ourselves. Laughter echoed through the hall. High Commander Vorath shook his head in disbelief. Remove them? He said. Little human, the Ketheraks have 40 warships in your system. You have no military at all. What will you do? Throw rocks at them? Elena looked at him with eyes that held no fear. We hoped it would not come to this. What does that mean? You will see. She turned and walked out of the hall. Behind her, the aliens laughed and joked about the foolish humans who thought they could threaten a communion member. None of them noticed the Melodari representative in the corner, who had stopped laughing. None of them saw the fear in its glowing form, because the Melodari were very old, and they remembered stories from ancient times, stories about a species called humanity that had once been mentioned in the ruins of a dead civilization. The warnings written on those ruins had been very clear. Do not wake the sleeping giants. Do not provoke the patient ones, for when they rise, even the stars will tremble. The Melodari hoped those stories were just myths. It was about to learn that they were not. 6 days had passed since Ambassador Elena Vasquez delivered humanity's warning to the Galactic Council. 6 days of laughter and mockery from the communion's powerful species. 6 days of preparation on Earth. Commander Draxus stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the blue planet rotate slowly beneath him. He was in a good mood. The foolish humans had given him exactly what he needed, an excuse for violence. They threatened a communion member, he said to his officers. That is an act of war. The council has authorized punitive action. What kind of action, Commander? Asked his second-in-command. We will destroy one of their cities. Something small, maybe 1,000,000 people. That should teach them respect. Draxus smiled his cold smile. After that, they will give us whatever we want. The Kethrax fleet began moving into position. 40 warships spread across Earth orbit, their weapons powering up. On the surface below, people looked up at the sky with fear. They had trusted the communion. They had believed in peaceful contact. Now they saw the truth. In the underground command center, General Webb watched the enemy movements on a holographic display. They're targeting São Paulo, reported a young officer. Population 3 million. Webb nodded slowly. Time to revelation? Admiral Okonkwo reports the fleet is ready, just waiting for your order. Webb looked at Elena, who stood beside him. Her face was pale but determined. Are you sure about this? He asked. Once we do this, everything changes. There's no going back. There's no going back anyway, Elena replied. Not after they killed May. Not after they threatened to murder 3 million more people. She looked at the display, at the enemy ships preparing to rain death on innocent humans. We've hidden long enough. Webb picked up the communication device that connected him to humanity's hidden fleet. His hand was steady, but his heart was racing. 150 years of preparation had led to this moment. Admiral Okonkwo, he said, execute Operation Prometheus. Deep in the asteroid belt, something began to happen. To anyone watching, the asteroids looked like ordinary rocks floating in space. They had looked that way for over a century, but now those rocks started to crack and fall away, revealing what had been hidden inside them. Ships, massive ships, built in secret over generations. Their hulls gleamed with technology that the communion had never seen. Their weapons pulsed with energy that defied the known laws of physics. And at the center of the hidden fleet, the largest ship of all revealed itself. The HSS Prometheus was 12 kilometers long. It was not beautiful like the alien vessels, with their smooth curves and flowing shapes. It was brutal, angular, covered in weapons that made the Kethrax warships look like toys. It was a ship built for one purpose: war. Commander Draxus was reviewing targeting data when his sensor officer screamed, Commander, contacts emerging from the asteroid belt. What kind of contacts? I don't know. The readings don't make sense. They're huge. Draxus turned to look at the sensor display and felt something he had never experienced in his 300 years of life. Fear. 200 ships were emerging from hiding. They moved in perfect formation, faster than anything the Kethrax had ever seen. And at the head of the formation was a monster. That's not possible, Draxus whispered. That ship is bigger than a space station. His officers stared at their screens in horror. The human fleet was surrounding them with impossible speed. Within minutes, the Kethrax warships were completely encircled. Admiral James Okonkwo sat on the bridge of the Prometheus, watching the enemy fleet with calm eyes. He was a quiet man who had spent his entire career preparing for this moment. He had trained thousands of officers, planned hundreds of battle scenarios, and built the greatest military force in galactic history, all without the communion knowing. Hail the enemy commander, he ordered. Draxus appeared on the screen, his reptilian face twisted with shock and confusion. What is this? He demanded. Where did these ships come from? This is impossible. Nothing is impossible, Commander, Okonkwo replied. We have been preparing for this meeting for a very long time. You lied. You said you had no military. We said what you wanted to hear. You never bothered to look deeper. Okonkwo leaned forward. Now listen carefully. You have 1 hour to surrender your weapons and leave human space. If you do not, we will disable your ships. If you resist, we will destroy you. You can't threaten a communion member. The entire communion will come for you. We are counting on it. Okonkwo cut the transmission. He turned to his weapons officer. Target their engines and weapon systems. Precision strikes only. I want 0 casualties if possible. Yes, Admiral. Draxus tried to fight. He ordered his ships to attack. to break through the human formation and escape. It was useless. Human weapons tore through Kethrak's shields like they weren't there. Human ships dodged and weaved around enemy fire with impossible speed. Within 30 minutes, all 40 Kethrak's warships were drifting helplessly, their weapons silent and their engines dead. "This is the HSS Prometheus to all Kethrak's vessels," Okonkwo announced. "Your ships have been disabled. You will be escorted out of human space. Do not return." Draxus slammed his fist against his command chair. "The Communion will hear of this. They will send the Grand Fleet. They will burn your planets to ash. We look forward to meeting them." News of the battle spread across the galaxy at the speed of light. Protected species watched in amazement as the story unfolded. The humans, the weak and primitive humans who everyone had dismissed, had built a fleet that made the Kethraks look like children. High Commander Vorath received the report in his chambers on the Valorian homeworld. He read it 3 times, certain it must be a mistake. It was not. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "We scanned their entire system. We found nothing." "They hid it from us," replied his intelligence officer. "They hid everything. For over a century." Vorath felt a cold chill run down his spine. The humans had fooled the entire Communion. They had smiled and bowed while building weapons that could destroy empires. What else had they hidden? What else were they capable of? "Assemble the Grand Fleet," he ordered. 500 ships. We go to Earth and end this now, before they become an even bigger threat. Is that wise, High Commander? If they have more surprises. We outnumber them 2 to 1. Whatever tricks they have won't be enough. Vorath stood up, his forearms clenched with determination. "The Communion will not be humiliated by primitives. We will crush them and make an example that the galaxy will never forget." 3 days later, the Grand Fleet jumped into human space. 500 warships emerged from faster-than-light travel near Jupiter. It was the largest military force the Communion had deployed in over 1,000 years. The combined firepower of a dozen species gathered to destroy one young civilization that had dared to fight back. High Commander Vorath stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Pride of Valoria, watching his fleet spread across the darkness of space. "Scan for the human ships," he ordered. "Commander, they're already here." Vorath looked at the tactical display and felt the chill return. The human fleet was waiting for them. 200 ships arranged in a defensive formation around Earth, the massive Prometheus at their center. But that wasn't what made him afraid. It was the fact that the humans didn't look worried at all. Admiral Okonkwo appeared on his screen. "Welcome to human space, High Commander. We've been expecting you." "You are outnumbered and outmatched," Vorath replied, forcing confidence into his voice. "Surrender now and we might spare your population." "I don't think you understand the situation." Okonkwo's voice was calm, almost gentle. "Let me explain it to you." The tactical display changed. New contacts appeared, ships emerging from hiding places across the solar system, from the rings of Saturn, from the moons of Neptune, from places the Communion hadn't thought to look. More and more and more, until the display was filled with them. "What you see here is our home defense force," Okonkwo said. "Just the ships we keep in this system to protect Earth. Our main fleet is elsewhere." Vorath stared at the display. The human fleet now numbered over 500 ships, matching the Grand Fleet exactly. And if this was just their defense force? "You're bluffing," he said, but his voice wavered. "I never bluff." "High Commander." Okonkwo's eyes were hard as steel. "Now let's talk about what happens next. You can fight and you will lose. Many of your people will die. Or you can listen to what we have to say and everyone goes home alive." The Grand Fleet sat in space, 500 ships waiting for orders. Behind them, the void of space stretched to infinity. Before them, humanity waited with weapons ready and patience that had been forged over generations. The next few minutes would determine the fate of the galaxy. High Commander Vorath stared at the tactical display, watching human ships continue to appear from hidden positions across the solar system. Every minute brought new contacts. Every new contact made his situation worse. "Final count?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. 512 human vessels, Commander. They match us exactly in numbers. and their ships are significantly larger than ours. Vorath had commanded fleets for 3 centuries. He had conquered worlds and crushed rebellions. He had never felt afraid before. Now his 4 hands trembled as he gripped his command chair. "This changes nothing," he said, trying to convince himself as much as his crew. "Numbers are equal. We have centuries of combat experience. They are still primitives." Admiral Okonkwo's face remained calm on the communication screen. "I can see you're still considering your options, High Commander. Let me help you decide." The human admiral nodded to someone off-screen. A moment later, the tactical display updated again. The Valorian flagship, Pride of Valoria, was suddenly highlighted in red. "What are you doing?" Vorath demanded. "A demonstration. Watch your weapons array." Before Vorath could respond, something happened to his ship. There was no impact, no explosion, no visible attack. But every weapon on his flagship simply stopped working. Power readings dropped to 0. Targeting systems went dark. The greatest warship in the Valorian fleet was suddenly as harmless as a cargo vessel. "We have technology that can disable your weapons without destroying your ships," Okonkwo explained. "We could have used it on the Kethraks, but we wanted to save it for this moment, so you would understand exactly what you're dealing with." Vorath watched in horror as his crew scrambled to restore power. Nothing worked. The human weapon had killed his ship's offensive capability completely. "How?" he managed to ask. "We found things on Europa. Ancient things, from a civilization that died long before any of us existed. We spent 150 years learning their secrets." Okonkwo leaned forward. "The Communion thinks it rules the galaxy. But there were empires before yours, High Commander. Empires that made the Communion look like children playing with toys. We inherited their knowledge." "That's impossible. We would have found these ruins ourselves." "Would you? Your exploration ships scanned for resources and habitable planets. You never look beneath the ice of frozen moons. You never dig into asteroids that seem worthless. You're so busy conquering that you forgot to be curious." The human admiral shook his head slowly. "We are different. We look everywhere. We dig through everything. We ask questions that other species never think to ask." Vorath's second-in-command leaned close and whispered, "Commander, if they can disable our weapons at will, we cannot win this battle." "I know," Vorath growled. He looked at the display again. 500 human ships, any one of which might be carrying that terrible technology. 500 Communion ships, suddenly helpless despite all their firepower. "What do you want?" he asked finally. "A conversation," Okonkwo replied. "Send a shuttle to the Prometheus. Bring your senior officers and any delegates from other species. Ambassador Vasquez will meet with you." "Ambassador Vasquez? The woman who pretended to be a grateful primitive?" "The same. She has some things to explain to you." Vorath considered refusing. He considered ordering an attack anyway, dying with honor rather than surrendering to primitives. But he looked at his officers, at the young soldiers who had followed him into battle expecting victory. They didn't deserve to die for his pride. "Very well," he said. "We will talk." 1 hour later, a Valorian shuttle docked with the Prometheus. High Commander Vorath stepped onto the human ship, followed by representatives from 12 other species. They walked through corridors that hummed with power, past crew members who watched them with calm, confident eyes. Ambassador Elena Vasquez met them in a conference room. She looked exactly as she had before, small, gray-haired, with kind eyes. But Vorath saw her differently now. Those kind eyes had fooled the entire Communion. That warm smile had hidden plans for war. "Thank you for coming, High Commander," Elena said. "Please, sit down." "I will stand," Vorath replied stiffly. "Say what you need to say." Elena nodded. "Very well, let me start with a question. Do you know why we hid our true strength from you? Because you wanted to deceive us, to lull us into complacency before striking." "No." Elena shook her head. "We hid because we wanted to know who you really were." She pressed a button, and a holographic display appeared in the center of the room. Images began to play. Kethrak soldiers forcing people onto transport ships, mining colonies where workers died by the thousands, species that had been protected into extinction. The Communion presents itself as a union of species, A peaceful federation that helps young civilizations develop, Elena said. But the reality is very different. The communion is an empire. The strong species rule. The weak species serve. And anyone who doesn't fit either category gets eliminated. That is how the galaxy works, Vorath said. The strong survive. The weak adapt or perish. Is it? Or is that just what you tell yourselves to justify what you do? The display changed again. Now it showed something different. Human history. Wars and atrocities, yes, but also something else. The end of slavery. The creation of international law. The slow, painful progress toward equality and justice. Humanity was not always good, Elena admitted. We have done terrible things to each other. We've conquered and killed and exploited our own kind for thousands of years. She looked directly at Vorath. But we learned. We evolved. Not biologically, but morally. We decided that the strong protecting the weak was more important than the strong crushing the weak. Pretty words, Vorath said. Easy to say when you have overwhelming force to back them up. That's exactly the point. Elena stepped closer to him. We could have revealed ourselves months ago. We could have destroyed the Kethrax fleet instead of just disabling it. We could be destroying your fleet right now instead of talking to you. But we don't want to. Then what do you want? We want to change things. Not through conquest, but through choice. Elena gestured to the representatives from other species who had come with Vorath. There are ancient laws in the Communion Charter. Laws that say any species with certain technological capabilities must be offered full membership. Laws that protect young species from exploitation. Laws that the Valorians have hidden for centuries because they benefit from the current system. A murmur ran through the alien representatives. Some of them looked at Vorath with new expressions. Anger, suspicion, hope. We know about those laws, Elena continued. We meet every requirement. We demand full membership in the communion. And we demand that those laws be enforced for every species, not just the powerful ones. You would use your weapons to force reform? Our weapons are for defense. We will not conquer or enslave, but we will protect. Elena's voice grew hard. Any species that wants our help will have it. Any species that attacks us or our friends will regret it. And any species that continues the old ways of exploitation will find that we are no longer willing to look away. Vorath was silent for a long moment. He looked at the other representatives, saw the hope in their eyes. He looked at Elena, saw the certainty in hers. He looked at the walls of the human ship and thought about the power hidden within them. The Valorian hierarchy will never accept this, he said finally. Our people have ruled for too long to simply surrender authority. Then don't surrender it, share it. Elena smiled, and for the first time it seemed genuine. We're not asking you to bow to us. We're asking you to stand beside us, to help build something better than what exists now. And if we refuse, then you return to your ships and leave human space. We will not attack you, but we will protect anyone who asks for protection. And eventually the galaxy will change anyway, with or without you. Vorath thought about his options. He could fight and probably lose. He could flee and watch the communion slowly crumble as other species rallied to the humans, or he could do something he had never done before, except that he might not have all the answers. I need to consult with my government, he said. Of course, take all the time you need. Elena gestured toward the door. But while you're thinking, consider this. The Kethrax commander who killed that child on Mars is still alive. We captured him when we disabled his ship. Under communion law, we have the right to execute him. Vorath nodded. That is your right. We're not going to exercise it. We're going to put him on trial. A fair trial with evidence and witnesses and a proper defense. Because that's what civilized species do. For the first time, something changed in Vorath's eyes. Not defeat, but something else. Something that might have been respect. You are strange creatures, he said. You have the power to destroy us, and you choose to lecture us about justice. Power without wisdom is just destruction, Elena replied. We have the power. Now we want to find out if the communion has the wisdom to use this chance. Vorath turned to leave, then paused at the door. The Melodari have a legend about a species like yours. They call them the patient ones, beings who wait and watch and prepare, who judge others not by their words but by their actions. I've heard that legend. The legend says that when the patient ones finally reveal themselves, the galaxy will face a choice, evolution or extinction. Vorath looked back at her. Which do you think the communion will choose? Elena Vasquez smiled, and this time there was warmth in it. Real warmth, the kind that comes from hope rather than deception. That's up to you, High Commander. That's always been up to you. Vorath left the Prometheus and returned to his flagship. The Grand Fleet sat in space, weapons silent, waiting for orders. Behind them, the human fleet waited too. Two great powers facing each other across the void, the fate of 1,000 worlds hanging in the balance. For 3 days, the Grand Fleet sat motionless in human space while High Commander Vorath communicated with the Valorian government. Messages flew between ships at the speed of light. Arguments raged across thousands of light years. The future of civilization itself was being decided in conference rooms and council chambers. On Earth, people watched the skies and waited. On protected worlds across the communion, species who had suffered under exploitation prayed for change. In hidden places throughout the galaxy, those who had lost hope began to find it again. Admiral Okonkwo stood on the bridge of the Prometheus, drinking coffee and reading reports. He had not slept in 2 days, but his hands were steady, and his mind was clear. He had trained his entire life for moments like this. "Any response from the Valorians?" he asked. "Nothing official yet, Admiral, but our intelligence suggests heavy debate in their council." "Let them debate. Time is on our side." In truth, Okonkwo was worried. Not about the battle if it came to that. He was confident his fleet could win. But winning wasn't the goal. Changing the galaxy was the goal, and that required the Valorians to choose cooperation over conflict. The message came on the 4th day. High Commander Vorath appeared on the communication screen, his 4 arms folded across his chest. His face was impossible to read, but something in his posture had changed. He looked smaller somehow, or perhaps just tired. "Admiral Okonkwo," he said, "Ambassador Vasquez, I have been authorized to negotiate." Elena Vasquez stepped forward, her heart beating fast despite her calm expression. "We're listening, High Commander. The Valorian hierarchy has considered your demands. Full membership for humanity, enforcement of the ancient laws protecting young species, reform of the communion structure." Vorath paused. "We accept." Elena let out a breath she hadn't known she was holding. "All of it?" "All of it. But we have conditions." "Name them." "First, the transition must be gradual. Centuries of tradition cannot be changed overnight. We need time to adapt, to explain to our people why things are different now." "That's reasonable," Elena agreed. "What else?" "Second, humanity must not seek revenge against species that wronged you. Not against the Kethrax, not against anyone else. Justice through law, not punishment through force." Admiral Okonkwo nodded. "That was always our intention." "Third," Vorath hesitated. "Third, we want to understand. How did you do this? How did primitives who could barely reach their own moon build a fleet that rivals the Grand Fleet? How did you fool our best scientists and intelligence officers for over a century?" Elena smiled. "That's a long story, High Commander. Perhaps we can discuss it over dinner." For the first time, something that might have been humor flickered in Vorath's eyes. "Perhaps we can." The peace treaty was signed 1 week later aboard the Prometheus. Representatives from every communion species gathered in the great conference hall, watching as High Commander Vorath and Ambassador Vasquez wrote their names on the document that would reshape galactic civilization. "Let this mark a new era," Elena said, her voice carrying across the silent room. "Not an era of human dominance, but an era of genuine partnership. We stand together or we fall apart. That is the choice we make today." Vorath nodded solemnly. "The Valorian hierarchy agrees. We have been rulers for too long. Perhaps it is time to be partners instead." Across the communion, change began immediately. Protected species received new rights and protections. Exploitative practices were banned. Mining colonies where workers had died by thousands were shut down or reformed. The Kethrax commander who had killed Little May on Mars was tried before a galactic court and sentenced to life imprisonment, a punishment that shocked species used to solving problems through execution. "Why didn't you kill him?" a Kethrax representative asked Elena after the trial. He murdered a child. Your people wanted blood. Some of them did, Elena admitted. But revenge doesn't bring back the dead. It only creates more pain. She looked at the representative with steady eyes. We believe in justice, not vengeance. That's the difference between civilization and savagery. The representative had no answer for that. She simply walked away, her mind turning over ideas she had never considered before. Months passed. The galaxy continued to change. Human ships traveled to worlds that had suffered under communion rule, bringing aid and technology rather than demands and threats. Human scientists shared knowledge freely with species that had been denied education. Human diplomats helped negotiate treaties between species that had been enemies for millennia. And slowly, something unexpected happened. Species that had feared humanity began to admire them. Worlds that had prepared for conquest found friendship instead. The patient ones of legend had revealed themselves, and they were not monsters, they were teachers. 1 year after the standoff, High Commander Vorath visited Earth for the first time. He walked through the streets of Geneva with Ambassador Vasquez, watching humans go about their daily lives. Children played in parks. Old people sat on benches, feeding birds. Couples walked hand in hand, enjoying the sunshine. I don't understand, Vorath said. Your species has the power to rule the galaxy. Why do you live like this? Why aren't there monuments to your victories? Palaces for your leaders? Elena smiled. Because that's not what matters to us. Then what does? She pointed to a young mother pushing a stroller, her baby laughing as birds flew overhead. That, ordinary people living ordinary lives. Safety and happiness and hope for the future? She turned to Vorath. We didn't build those weapons because we wanted power. We built them because we wanted to protect moments like this. For us, and eventually for everyone. Vorath watched the mother and child for a long moment. In 3 centuries of life, he had conquered worlds and commanded millions of soldiers. He had never once considered that the point of power might be to protect something this simple. Your species is very strange, he said finally. I know, Elena replied, but maybe the galaxy needs some strangeness. 5 years later, Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood before the new Galactic Assembly, the reformed governing body of what was no longer called the Communion. Representatives from hundreds of species filled the Great Hall, some in person, some through holographic projection. Humanity had a seat among them, equal to the Valorians, equal to everyone. We came to you as strangers, Elena said, her voice strong despite her years. You saw us as primitives. We saw you as potential threats. Both of us were wrong. She looked around the hall at the faces of beings from 1,000 worlds. We are not primitives, but we are not conquerors either. We are something else, something we hope you will become too. We are guardians. The assembly listened in silence. Our ships still patrol the darkness between stars. Our weapons still wait in their hidden places. But not to threaten you, never to threaten you, Elena smiled. We guard the gates because someone has to. We hold the power because someone must. And we chose to use that power for protection rather than domination because that is who we decided to be. She stepped back from the podium. Today we invite every species in the galaxy to join us, not as subjects or servants, but as partners. Together we will face whatever challenges the universe brings. Together we will build something that lasts. The applause began slowly, but grew until it filled the hall like thunder. Species that had been enemies for millennia stood side by side, united by hope. And watching from the back of the hall, High Commander Vorath felt something he had never expected to feel. Pride, not in the Valorian hierarchy, but in something bigger, in a galaxy that was learning to be better. Far away at the edge of human space, the HSS Prometheus floated silently among the asteroids. Its weapons were powered down. Its crew went about their duties with quiet efficiency. It was exactly as it had been for over a century, watching, waiting, protecting. Admiral Okonkwo, now retired, had returned to visit his old ship one last time. He stood on the observation deck looking out at the stars. Was it worth it? Asked a young officer who had been assigned to escort him. All those years of hiding? All that preparation? Okonkwo was quiet for a long moment. He thought about the fear they had felt when they first detected alien signals. The sacrifices generations had made to build the fleet, the terrible responsibility of holding power that could destroy civilizations. "Look out there," he said finally, pointing at a distant star. "That's the Kethrak's homeworld. 5 years ago, they would have worked humanity to death in their minds. Now they're our allies. They're learning to be better." He turned to face the young officer. "We built these ships hoping we'd never use them. We trained for war while praying for peace. And in the end, the greatest victory wasn't destroying our enemies. It was giving them a chance to become our friends." The officer nodded slowly, understanding. "We are the Guardians," Okonkwo continued. "Not because we're stronger than everyone else, but because we're patient. Because we believe that every species can grow and change, just like we did." He smiled. "That's humanity's real secret weapon. Not our ships or our technology. It's our faith that tomorrow can be better than today." The stars shone cold and bright through the window. Somewhere out there, a galaxy was learning to hope. And the Prometheus watched over it all, a sleeping giant that had chosen mercy over vengeance, patience over fury, and wisdom over war. The warship that humanity revealed had changed everything, but it had never fired a single shot in anger. That was the real victory,